Variable and fixed costs problem 2. Skittles Pet Store provides a dog wash service. Its highest and lowest bills of $4,000 and $2,200 were incurred in the months of May and November respectively. If 600 dogs were washed in May and 200 dogs were washed in November, what was the fixed cost associated with the company's water bill? So we're looking for the fixed costs associated with the company's water bill, Now we're given two specific months. We're talking about the months of May and November, and we have some information about May and November. For this question, we're going to look for the fixed costs associated with the company's water bill for May. So I'm going to add that on there. You could also do this for November as well, but we're going to do this for May. For May in this question, again, it's going to be the same type of calculation for November. So again, let's just go through and see what we have. We're given the highest and lowest bills of $4,000 and $2,200 were incurred in the months of May and the months of November, respectively. So $4,000, that is the total production cost in May. $2,200, that's the total production cost in November. Remember that total production costs, which I like to abbreviate as TPC, total production costs, that is made up of the sum of variable costs plus fixed costs. So here's our strategy. If we know TPC, or total production costs, for the month of May, and we know either variable costs or fixed costs, which we do. We do know the total production costs for May. We have that right here. If we can figure out the total or the variable costs for May or the fixed costs for May, we can solve for the other. So as long as you have one or the other, one of these items, you can solve for the other. So if we know total production costs, we know variable costs, we don't know fixed costs, we can solve for it. Or if we have total production costs, which we do for May, we don't know variable costs, we can solve, or we know fixed costs, we can solve for variable costs. You just need two of those three, and you can use algebra to get the other. Now, if you don't know two of these items, unfortunately, you're out of luck. Now, let's see if we can get one of these respective items. Again, we already know May's total production cost. We have that. It's $4,000. We just need to figure out, can we solve for variable costs or fixed costs given the information? So we know that the highest and lowest bills were in May and November. We're told that information. What we can do is, because we know the rate of change, we can solve for the variable cost per unit. And I'll explain how. You're like, well, how exactly? I will explain. So variable cost, VC, per unit. What we can do, the formula here, and this is kind of backing into this, we look at the change. So triangle or delta for change in total cost divided by change in volume of activity. And we have the ability to do change. So the idea is that if you can get two respective total costs here and two number of units for 2 months, and you're looking at monthly amounts, you can solve and figure out the variable cost and then solve for the amount. So specifically, we know we can look at the change in May minus, so the change will be looking at May minus November cost. And then we can also have the change in volume, which will be the May minus November number of units. So we can solve for these things. Let's go ahead and first look at the cost. So we're given $4,000 and $2,200. So we have our $4,000 amount. Let's put these in parentheses. Minus $2,200. That's going to be our numerator. Our denominator is going to be the number of units. So this is all this slash, this is divides over that amount. And then the denominator is going to be the change in number of units from May to November. So again, 4,000 was right here, May. 2,200 was November. And then the number of units, 600 for May, 200 for November. So we can go ahead and subtract those. We take 600 minus 200. And we set up our formula, which that means we're going to have $1,800 over the change in units, 600 minus 200, which is 400 units. And that means our variable cost per unit, when we calculate that out, is $4.50 per dog. per dog. And the idea here, the reason why you're doing this is because the fixed cost per month should be the same. So that the change should be a function of, or the change in the amount of dogs that are washed in each month, and the change in the amount should be attributable to the variable costs. Given that information, we now can solve for our total variable costs in May, and we can solve for our fixed costs. So remember, we're looking at May. The May total production costs, $4,000. $4,000. That's total production costs. And we can determine our variable costs in May. Our variable costs are going to be 600 units, or 600 dogs. I keep saying units, just thinking dogs. 600 units times $4.50 per unit or per dog. And that gives us a variable amount of $2,700. $2,700. And then we can solve for fixed costs, which we do not know. Fixed costs for the month of May. When we do this calculation, so fixed costs equal total production costs of $4,000 minus our variable costs, so that's total production costs, minus our variable costs, total variable costs for the month of May, which are $2,700. So fixed costs equal $1,300. $1,300. Now, one thing that's interesting, I mentioned earlier we're solving for May because the question did not specify which month. I told you to use May, but really go back through this and you will see if you use the numbers for November, you will get the same exact calculation for $1,300 because you would end up with $4.50 per dog, same calculation for variable costs, and then your total production costs would be $2,200 minus your variable cost, $4.50 per dog times 200 dogs. That's going to give you $900. So $2,200 minus $900 is $1,300. So, that's why I didn't have the month. You can really either use May or November to calculate this. So I kind of, I told you, let's do May at the beginning. Let's do May. You can actually do May or you can do November. And a lot of times questions are designed that way. And if it says, well, it's not asking it for a specific month, the fixed cost will be the same in each month. That's why they're fixed. So it's a monthly fixed cost. Of course, if you take 1,300 times 12, that would be the amount for the year. So if I asked you for the year, 1,300 times 12 would be the annual amount. But the fixed cost monthly will be the same, whether it's the lowest or highest. So this is really a good illustration of an example where you can get into fixed costs. You can also determine variable costs, and you can see how things work out.